When most people think of World War I, they think of mud, gas masks and endless trenches. But few realise that one of the greatest struggles of the war wasn't fought with bullets. It was fought with hunger. Supply lines failed, food spoiled in transport, and soldiers were trapped for weeks in the freezing muck with nothing fresh to eat. Yet somehow they kept going. They didn't have high-tech MREs or freeze-dried rations. What they had was a simple, almost primitive food, one so basic that it barely seems like a meal at all. But that simplicity was exactly what made it a lifesaver. It required no refrigeration, almost no preparation, and it could sustain a man through days of combat. This wasn't just food, it was survival science born out of desperation. Let's uncover the forgotten World War I survival food that proved that simplicity, when understood correctly, can mean the difference between life and death, and how its core principles still apply to modern survival today. Soldiers didn't need gourmet meals, they needed endurance. The brutal reality of trench warfare meant that soldiers rarely got hot meals. Food had to be compact, non-perishable, and easy to transport through a war zone. Anything too complex simply didn't survive the journey from depot to front line. That's where the simplest foods, hardtack, pea sausage and tinned meat, became heroes. Hardtack, a hard, dry biscuit made from nothing more than flour, water and salt, became the universal soldier's ration. It was so hard that troops had to soak it in tea or soup just to chew it. Yet it was virtually indestructible. Properly stored, it could last for decades, immune to rot, insects and moisture. In the chaos of trench life, where everything was soaked and filthy, that kind of reliability mattered more than taste. What made hardtack so effective was the complete absence of water. Bacteria couldn't grow, mould couldn't form, and soldiers always had a source of carbohydrates. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave men the energy to dig trenches, haul ammunition, and march for hours in cold rain. The same principle still applies today. In any survival situation, foods with low moisture and high density last longest. You can make hardtack yourself by mixing flour, salt and just enough water to form a stiff dough. Roll it thin, bake it low and slow until bone dry, and let it cool. Store it in an airtight container, and you'll have food that can outlast nearly anything on a grocery shelf. Pear sausage was the secret weapon of German survival. While the British and French clung to hardtack and tinned meat, the Germans turned to an ingenious invention called Erbswurst, or pea sausage. It looked like a thick cylinder wrapped in paper, but inside was a concentrated mix of dried pea flour, salt and pork fat. To eat it, soldiers would slice off a chunk, dissolve it in boiling water, and create a hearty pea soup that was both filling and full of protein. The brilliance of Erbswurst lay in its chemistry. The dried peas provided complex carbohydrates and plant-based protein, while the pork fat offered essential calories and helped preserve the mix by sealing out air. The result was a compact, high-energy meal that didn't spoil even in the dampest trenches. It was efficient, cheap and scalable. Germany produced tons of it throughout the war. You can replicate this principle easily at home. All you need to do is take dried split peas, grind them into flour and mix with rendered fat, either animal or vegetable, some salt, and, if you like, a bit of dried herbs or bouillon powder. Then form it all into small bars or sausages, wrap them tightly and store in a cool place. When you boil these, they turn into a rich, nutritious soup. It's simple, reliable, and honestly, still one of the best homemade emergency foods you can make. No refrigeration, no additives, just good, solid fuel for the body. Simplicity was the real innovation behind these rations. World War I soldiers didn't survive because they had variety. They survived because their food didn't fail. The secret wasn't in complex recipes, but in understanding the fundamentals of preservation. Every army ration from that era followed the same rules: remove water, add salt, and seal against air. That formula prevented bacterial growth and kept calories stable for months on end. For example, tinned bully beef, salted corned beef sealed in fat, became the cornerstone of the British diet. Fat acted as a natural oxygen barrier, preserving the meat without refrigeration. Soldiers could eat it straight from the tin or mix it with crushed hardtack to make a rudimentary stew. While monotonous, it provided enough protein and calories to keep entire battalions functioning. Modern preppers and outdoor enthusiasts can learn from this, you know. You don't need a survival pantry full of expensive freeze-dried packs. A combination of dried grains, salted meat or jerky, and preserved fats like tallow or lard can keep you alive indefinitely if stored correctly. The key is mastering dryness, salt, and fat balance, the same principles that fed soldiers through one of the harshest wars in history. One of the most remarkable aspects of trench life was how soldiers learned to make the best of their limited ingredients. With only hardtack, tinned meat and pea sausage, they developed inventive ways to combine them into more satisfying meals. A popular dish called trench stew mixed crumbled hardtack with bully beef and a splash of condensed milk or tea cooked over a small spirit burner. The result wasn't elegant, but it was warm, filling, and morale-boosting. This kind of resourcefulness turned survival food into something sustainable. It's a reminder that even in modern prepping, adaptability is as important as ingredients. If you can learn how to stretch simple staples into multiple meals by soaking, boiling or mixing them creatively, you gain far more value than from expensive packaged rations. You can test this concept today. Make a simple field stew from hardtack, canned meat and lentils or peas. Try cooking it outdoors or in a limited setting. The exercise teaches not only how to prepare food under hardship, but also how little you truly need to stay strong. What made these World War I foods legendary wasn't just their endurance, it was their universality. Whether a German in Flanders or a British soldier in the Somme, everyone depended on the same principles of preservation: salt, dryness, and fat. That combination sustained millions of men through years of deprivation. In a world where we rely on fragile supply chains and perishable goods, those old lessons matter more than ever. Food security begins with simplicity, knowing how to create meals that last, that nourish, and that don't depend on modern convenience. If there's one takeaway from the soldiers who lived and died in the trenches, it's that the simplest foods are often the most reliable. They remind us that survival isn't about luxury. It's about understanding what the body truly needs and how nature itself can preserve it. If this deep dive into World War I survival food gave you something to think about, make sure to subscribe to In the Beginning for more history-grounded survival wisdom. Share this with a fellow history or outdoor enthusiast, because the best lessons aren't written in textbooks. They're carved into the endurance of those who learned them the hard way.